Today we are focusing on increasing visibility and collaboration for faster project delivery. But first, some introductions. My name is Dan and I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at eBuilder. I've had the privilege of working with architects, engineers, contractors, and owners over the last 23 years while working for companies such as Primavera, Newforma, and now eBuilder. Joining me today is Chris, a Senior Solutions Engineer here at eBuilder. He grew through the ranks of companies such as GE and Primavera. So for our agenda today, we will start with an overview of eBuilder and how we work with customers across the entire life cycle of their capital improvement program. We will then walk through the before and after picture of cost visibility. We will finish by answering some commonly asked questions. Our customers have managed over $300 billion in capital improvements through our platform. Most of our customers started their journey with eBuilder using paper and Microsoft Excel to manage their capital programs. So if this describes you, don't feel bad. They recognized this ad hoc method was not scalable and was resulting in projects over budget, behind schedule, and with far too many surprises. They realized they needed a centralized program management system, resulting in the implementation of eBuilder. As they progress through their journey with us, they automate their numerous business processes. And this results in a fully integrated system. One customer leveraged $70 million in savings from active projects to fund a new research facility several years ahead of the original planned start date. Another customer reduced approval times from 16 to 2 days, and in one instance processed a change order approval between 3 different companies across 3 different geographies in under 35 minutes. And finally, we had another customer whose volume of annual construction expenditures tripled without the need to add any additional staff. And we are proud that our customers are recognized as top performers in their markets. So what does the ideal program management information system look like? You as the owner should always be in the center. You have your groups on the same system getting access to the same information pertaining to budget, cost, schedule, scope, and quality. Then key information is made available to your internal stakeholders from dashboards and reports, 3D designs to your stakeholders, forecast and payments to your finance team, and so on. Then, in a secure fashion, bidirectional communication and information flows to all of your external contractors. Architects submit design revisions and help answer your questions. CMs and PMs manage detailed cost and potential change orders. Suppliers send submittals, and so on. All of that information flow is managed through a business process management system that is smart enough to know who has to approve what and when, and who has the latest version. All of this on a program management information system where all information is safely stored and accessible anytime, anywhere, and on any device. We designed eBuilder to work the way you as an owner do your business, not the other way around. We provide robust capabilities to manage all of your projects. Intelligent forms allow you to collect the information you need that can be routed through an automated workflow. AppExchange connects your accounting and other enterprise systems, eliminating duplicate data entry. You can manage program and project costs starting with capital planning, through estimate, to construction baseline and changes. The robust document management system enables automated version control and audit trail. We provide value across the entire life cycle of your project, including capital planning, design, procurement and bidding, construction, and facility operations. We provide you with data-driven insights into the health of your project so you can make informed decisions. There are 3 main capabilities, starting with industry-leading business intelligence capabilities for rich, executive-ready graphical visualizations, drill-through dashboards, and simple tabular reporting much like Microsoft Excel. All of these are delivered to you on your choice of interface, whether they be your favorite internet browser, iOS or Android app, or even just email. Now let's take a look at how the current lack of visibility adversely impacts project delivery. What I thought we'd do is discuss the issues you face with traditional approaches to project management forecasting and explore a better way to manage these unexpected scenarios. Owners of capital projects know that every project starts with a good plan. We have heard that the typical project will follow an S-curve where costs grow over the life of the project. It has an approved budget that you must rely upon because funding is already approved. However, according to research conducted by Dodge Data and Analytics, 85% of owners report that they experience projects that exceed original cost and schedule. What happens is the project experiences issues. Because project information is traditionally disjointed and stored in disparate systems and/or in spreadsheets, these issues result in a material impact. Over time, the issues result in an irrecoverable cost and schedule impact that cannot be made up without change orders. As a result, the project is completed not only late, but also over budget. Why is this? Often it is caused by everyone using different applications. The financial analyst, the project manager, and the accountant use their own applications to manage their work. This leads to an unclear and often outdated view of program financials for the executive. Their internal process to collect data and normalize it is all manually driven. This leads to what I like to call stale data. By the time the executive receives the information they need, it is outdated and often cannot be trusted. This becomes even worse when people need to communicate with each other. The PM has to combine multiple spreadsheets and then email them to the executive, who then tries to produce reports that are of the quality expected by senior management and the board. The accountant is re-entering information into the financial system. The data is prone to errors and is often outdated. This has a negative impact on informed decision making in a timely manner. This process often is so painful and labor intensive, it starts to create information silos on the project. Now just multiply this across all the projects that you have to manage, and it becomes easy to see why it is so hard to drive consistency and productivity across the entire capital program. We have heard that there are dedicated full-time staff whose only job it is to aggregate and normalize data, since the project managers need to focus their time on higher priority activities, not spending time wasted manipulating Excel spreadsheets. We have a customer who is using spreadsheets to manage their project. Each project manager started to do things a little bit differently, which seemed fine at first. However, what first was a few small differences morphed into every project manager running their project completely differently, resulting in no data conformity or standardization. This resulted in hiring full-time staff to manually aggregate data across the various project managers in order to create manual reports and charts. These were then sent to the VP of Design and Construction, who in turn further manipulated these reports and charts to communicate project performance to senior executives and the board. The result? Decentralized information, inconsistent process, wasted time manipulating data for reporting, unclear accountability, and ultimately project surprises. Now let's take a look at how this works with an eBuilder. Over to you, Chris.
All right, thanks, Dan. Yeah, so let's take a look a little bit more into how we use and manage costs within eBuilder's cost management system to help eliminate some of these issues that Dan described for us earlier. So with our project cost module, what we're ultimately trying to do here is to give you the ability to have that total visibility into your project costs, not only the current status of what's going on with your projects, but also the ability to forecast and be able to account for things that you're aware of that may potentially impact your projects. And then we'll talk about how we take all that information and ultimately roll that data up to the program or portfolio level and allow us to easily share that information across the different stakeholders that Dan identified, from the accounting side to our financial analysts to our project management community to really any of the other stakeholders that have a need for this information on our projects. So as we come into eBuilder, let's take a look at how we use the cost module to eliminate the need for all these different multiple spreadsheets and disparate systems and capture all of our project costs in one location giving us that complete picture of what's going on in real time. So when we come into eBuilder's cost module, first thing we're going to look at here is what we call our cost summary worksheet. Now, this is, again, something that may look very familiar to you from a spreadsheet perspective, and we're going to use it in a very similar fashion, only this is going to be much more, have much more intelligence built into the spreadsheet and allowing us to understand what's going on with our project costs. So the first thing to note here is that we organize this cost summary sheet around a cost breakdown structure. So this is where we're going to identify our different budget line items and categories of cost on our project. In my case, I'm using a 3-segment cost breakdown structure here to help capture and identify my project budget information. My first bucket here is going to be, or my first segment rather, is going to be around organizing around a parcel. My second segment is going to be a category that I'm using to capture certain categories of cost. And my third segment is going to be all around my different line items. Now I can quickly come in here then and use this cost breakdown to help group my budget and look at things a little bit differently. So giving me some of the capabilities that I may be comfortable or used to within Excel, for example. So if I switch my group by here to my category, which is using my second segment here, to now categorize my costs in a different fashion. So again, I can quickly use this to look at my breakdown of my costs in multiple different views. I'm going to switch back to my parcel view here. The next thing we want to cover is understanding how this cost summary sheet is organized. So our first section here of 4 that this sheet is actually organized into is going to be all around our budget information. So we're going to start to capture our original budget information and any changes that may have taken place and approved against that budget over the course of the project. Our second area is going to be all around our commitments. So all of our contracts and purchase orders, and again, any changes that are taking place to those items over the life of the project are going to be managed here. Our third section is going to be all around our actual costs. So we're going to talk about our payment applications here and any invoicing that is coming in against our project that we need to track and manage. And then the fourth area is going to be all around just at completion calculations and variance calculations that allow us to analyze where we stand in our project at any given point in time. So with that being said, we can then start to use this cost sheet in many different ways to customize and kind of configure it in a fashion that we want to work with it in. And as you may have noticed here, one of the first things is that I have also the ability to kind of color code columns here that you may have seen as I scroll through here. So not only can I come in here and color code items, but I can also set alerts or triggers to alert me to information that I want to be paying attention to. And in my case here, I've got a couple alerts set to notify me of any change orders in excess of $300,000. So that's why you see these 2 cells here highlighted in yellow, alerting me that I've got changes there in excess of $300,000. And we'll come back to digging into those here in just a second. The next thing is that I can come in here and start to configure this for my own needs in the sense that I can rename these columns and start to call them a nomenclature that I'm more comfortable with. So I can call them whatever I'd like. I can reorder these columns. I can hide some of these columns if I'm not using them. I can even add additional columns. So I can begin to set this up for myself to use it in a manner in which I'm comfortable with and I understand. So with that being said, the first thing to understand about this as well is that this is very much what I'm going to call a smart sheet, in that any of the numbers that you see here, none of these numbers are directly entered into this system. They were all coming from a transaction of some type and being reflected here for us on our cost sheet, giving us visibility into what's going on. So to further understand that, I'm going to come in here and focus into one particular line item, and let's take a look at the transactions that are taking place there that are driving the numbers that we see here for this particular line item. So in this case, we're going to take a look at our HVAC equipment. And as I come in here and click into that particular line item, I'm presented with the line item details for that particular line item. So first thing I'm going to see here is kind of an overall financial summary reflecting essentially this cost summary sheet, but now for just this one particular line item. And so here I can see that, my original budget was $1.4 million for our HVAC equipment. I can see that there's, $300,000 here in approved changes that have taken place, as well as my commitments, as we discussed earlier, and my actual costs and so forth, as I scroll across my cost summary sheet here. But what we want to do is take a look at each one of these transactions and understand them a little bit better and how these numbers are coming to be. So let's take a look at this budget change that took place on our project here. So I can come into this tab that is isolating just the the budget changes that have taken place. In this case, I've got one for some additional HVAC units that was approved back in June. I can also come into my commitments and see that I've got one contract here against this particular line item that I've let for $1.35 billion. I can also view and see and understand any changes that have taken place against that particular commitment. And in this case, I've got two outstanding PCOs here for $306,000. If you recall back in the cost summary sheet, this was one of those cells that was highlighted in yellow, alerting me that I've got changes here in excess of $300,000. So it was these two transactions that triggered that alert for me on the cost summary sheet. From here, I can also come in and see all of my invoicing that has come in against this particular line item and be able to drill into any of this information to further understand the numbers that are being represented here. I can also from here see any documentation that has been attached to any of these numbers, further explaining where that information came from. So whether that was an actual invoice or my actual contract that I've attached here, or any change orders, for example, that may have come in. Let's come back here though and take a look at our budget change that took place here in a little bit more detail. So as I drill into this budget change, I can come into the details here and I can see that here's my change, right? That was approved back in June of 2017 for my $300,000 here. This transaction was managed within eBuilder in what we call a workflow. And so that workflow process here was handled in a structured manner in which someone came in and entered the request for the additional HVAC units that were estimated at $300,000. I can see that the reason for this change was identified as an owner directive. So our owner came in and asked for additional equipment to be installed. And I can see that it affected the particular line item that we've been looking at here, which is our heating and ventilating and air conditioning equipment. So as I look at this particular transaction, I can come in here and see that this is the path in which this transaction took to be managed and all of the reviews and approvals that took place as it worked its way through the process. And as it was routing through this process, this $300,000 change was being reflected back on our cost summary sheet as it worked its way through that process. So from the moment it was initially identified and entered into the system, it became a pending change that gave us visibility back on our cost summary sheet. As it moved its way through for approval, it ultimately ended up in the approval state and was reflected in our approved budget change, and then netting a result of a $1.7 million budget for our HVAC equipment. So as I can see, any of the transactions that were taking place here against that line item within the system are all reflected within the cost summary sheet and allowing me to drill into the details behind it that are the intelligence that are driving that cost summary sheet. So now that we have all of our costs actively being managed within the system in these different transactions, be it our budgets and budget changes to our commitments and any changes that have taken place to those commitments, or any of our invoicing and pay applications that are being routed and approved within the system, and ultimately reflecting here on this cost summary sheet, giving us that total visibility into what's going on at any given point in time. Now, typically what we see from a lot of our owner clients is that this is where the different stakeholders are going to have different versions of this information for their own purposes, as Dan described a little bit earlier. And then they're ultimately trying to reflect and share this information across the organization. And that's where all the time is eaten up in terms of aggregating and manipulating that data to be shared then with the particular stakeholders from a reporting perspective. And so now that we have this data, we can come in here and quickly share this information across the organization. So starting maybe with our executive who is just looking for real-time summarized information about the program, they can come in here at a dashboard level, and we can then define, the KPIs that they may be interested in and monitor across the program and roll that data up to that level and summarize it for them here in a dashboard. So as an executive, I can come in here and further click into one of these items to understand, maybe I want to analyze my budget variance here a little bit better, so I can drill into that. And now that's taking me into some more detailed cost information, again, that is rolled up across all these different projects quickly and easily for me to come in here and understand what's going on across my program with all of my projects. And if they want to understand even further into a little bit more detail, they can click into any one of these projects and now be taken back to that same detailed cost summary sheet that we've been looking at throughout this webinar. So that's just a starting point of a way that we can start to easily share this information without any extra work on the part of the project teams or anyone else within the organization that is having to aggregate this information. And from a reporting perspective, we can then come through and identify what other pieces of information that these different stakeholders, be it the financial community or accounting side or any of our other project stakeholders might be looking for, and easily report off this information instead of having to then further create and aggregate additional spreadsheets and the like and trying to share that across the organization. So I can come in here and, for example, maybe my accounting organization would like to see a cash flow across all of my projects on a month-by-month basis. So again, typically what we see is that folks are having to create several other spreadsheets to be able to deliver this type of information if they can do it at all. And so here real quickly with the click of a button, I was able to run a report showing me summarized cash flow across several different projects here in a given time period. And I can easily share this with my stakeholders. Or perhaps we had one client who was looking at being able to identify all the invoicing within a given draw request that they needed to share with their equity investment partner. And so we were able to create a report at a very high level here, organized by the different organization that was submitting invoices and when that invoice was included in a particular draw that they then requested for funding on their project. Again, all this data is being driven off of our cost summary sheet quickly and easily. A lot of times we also see that some of the financial analysts that are working in the within these projects also have several different pro forma spreadsheets that they may be working on at different times. Again, trying to aggregate some of this data and share it with their organization, but they have difficulty getting that real-time project data to include in their models. So here we can quickly come in and start to use that same cost information to drive some of those types of reporting. So in this case is an example of just aggregating some additional schedule and other project attributes about this given project, along with some cost information into a summarized report, very typical of some of the data that they're capturing in their pro forma reports. Another example of that same type of information here is kind of a monthly view of some different information showing the commitments by month, and then combining that with some square footage information for some per square foot calculations that are typical in a lot of their reporting. So as you can see, I can quickly come in here and now, instead of having to work with multiple spreadsheets across multiple different organizations and running the risk of inaccurate information or miscalculations within the data, and working from one source of truth and being able to then share that information with the rest of my project stakeholders. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dan for any questions.
First question, is there an audit trail for each of the transactions you demonstrated?
Yes, absolutely. So let's come back in here and take a look at our cost, our budget that we were looking at here before for our HVAC line item. And let's come back into our budget change that we were looking at here for $300,000, right? So as I take a look at that transaction and come in here, I can see very easily that we have a complete audit history of exactly how that transaction took place, right? So we can see from who submitted it, when is all date and time stamped, and we can easily see what steps it went through and who approved what. We even can track what information may have been changed from the old value to a new value as it worked its way through that approval process. So yes, we have a complete audit trail of every transaction.
Can a typical user easily create or modify reports?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get that all the time. So yes, any of these reports that you saw me running here, these are easy to modify and create from a user perspective, right? So as we take a look at any one of these reports, as you come into that running that report, you can simply come in here and easily modify these through a simple report wizard that we provide that just walks you through the steps of being able to create and modify a report. So all you need to do is just simply follow along, select the type of data that you're looking to report on, what type of report are you looking to create, simply coming down and selecting the data that you want to include in that particular report. So it's just a matter of checking these checkboxes on or off. You can even get creative here and add any formula-driven columns if you so choose within your report. And then just simply walk your way through the rest of this, the wizard here, and decide how you want to summarize information, configure your columns, how do you want to group and filter the data. And once you've made those changes, you can simply come in here and rerun your report. It's as easy as that.
Are you able to integrate data from eBuilder with our accounting or ERP system?
Yes, that's a very common question that we get. And we typically integrate with some form of an ERP system on a majority of our implementations. A typical example of that would be on invoicing, for example here. Invoicing and payapps is a very typical scenario in which organizations will use eBuilder to route and approve those invoices. And then once they're approved, we would have an integration with your ERP system, or we would then transfer that data over for payment into the ERP. And then once that item has been paid, usually we share back some data around the payment status in terms of how much was paid and when it was paid, and check number information and things like that. So it's very common. eBuilder provides our AppExchange platform, which is our integration platform that allows us to develop and integrate with ERP systems, really any system. And we can do that from all the way from a real-time integration down to simple import and export and anything in between.
Do executives need to log into eBuilder in order to run reports?
No, they don't. We can actually take our reports. All the reports that you see me run can actually be scheduled to be run. So you can set up if there's a batch of reports that you'd like to deliver to one of your executives. You can schedule those reports to be run, say every Monday morning at 8 a.m., and then have those delivered directly into your executive's email box for consumption when they come into the office.
Can we electronically sign documents with an eBuilder? For example, contracts, purchase orders, or change orders?
Absolutely, yes. eBuilder has the ability to integrate with systems like DocuSign, so we can allow and integrate any of those processes with DocuSign and allow you to then have that electronic signature for those particular transactions.
Great, thank you, Chris. For those who would like to learn more about eBuilder and how we can help your organization immediately, please visit www.e-builder.net and click the Request a Demo button in the upper right-hand corner. Or you can just email Julia at the email address on your screen. Again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.